I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Called the Coach, recorded on August 3rd, 2018. Called the Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you're listening to us live, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window down there. Just choose the login button, bottom left-hand corner, and then choose the guest account. Take the name out. It's a guest and a number. Take that out. Put your name in so we know who you are. Join us for live. You can ask questions live if you'd like to do that. If you're listening to the recorded version and have questions, send us an email really for any questions that you have. That email address, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your CliftonStrengths coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video and now downloadable audio, which we call podcasting. If you haven't gotten into that, it's a great way to get this information in a car, on a train, in a plane, recapture that time that you're traveling to get to professional development available for you. And all the links to get connected to it is available on our coaches blog. Head to coaching.gallup.com, click the resources tab, and scroll down to the podcast section. It's all there for you. Mike McDonald is our host today. He works as a senior workplace consultant here at Gallup on the Riverfront. Mike, it seems like I have seen a ton of you lately, which is always a good sign. Welcome to Call the Coach.
Well, I was going to apologize, but I won't. If it's a good thing, Jim, then we'll keep doing it. But yeah, no, I love it. For those of you listening, you probably figured out by now that Jim and I have a little bit of a bromance going on. I'll just put that out there.
True.
But,
it's true. But
yeah.
Speaking of bromance, we got a great guest. Let's get on to that.
Speaking of bros, yeah. No, Jim and I have been, so it's going to be, just so you all know, you're going to have to track our references to Jim's today, because we have Jim Collison, our legendary host and producer, and Jim Ball is our guest. And Jim Collison and I have been tracking Jim Ball and wanting to get him on as a guest for quite some time now. So it's awesome to make this happen. And I cannot wait for the value and the impact that we all gain from Jim's experience and expertise and what he brings from the world of strengths integrated through a lens of engagement to drive performance within his own organization. For those of you who don't know Jim already, he's really active in the coaching community on Facebook and with his own comments and endorsement of so much of the work that everyone's doing. But we're going to hear a little bit about Jim's story personally around strengths and engagement, but bringing us up to full speed in terms of leading an organization through change in the application of strengths and engagement to create change as a successful strategy. So as we dive into all that, more about Jim Ball, his top 5 strengths, you'll hear every one of them in our conversation, I have no doubt, but he is futuristic, strategic, activator, command, and significance. So we've got some influencing to experience today. And Jim is formerly the senior manager, talent and organizational development and change management leader for the Lonza site at their flagship site in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And Lonza Biotech is actually a global organization of over 14,000 people. So a huge role in a central position, influencing lots of people in really powerful ways. Jim Ball, it is fantastic to have you on the show. And I should say too, in Jim's list of designations, I am really proud to call Jim Ball my friend. We've spent a lot of time together, and I love every second that I get to spend with him. He makes me sharper, better, and I'm always left infinitely more advanced in my abilities having spent time with Jim, and I'm sure the rest of you will as well. So, Jim, it's great. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate that very warm introduction. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So Jim, let's jump right in. I think it's important for us to first really focus in on you. So tell us about you and your introduction to strengths. Where did it connect? Maybe where did you have to make sense out of it?
Sure.
Let us know about strengths through your own personal experience and encounter.
Good, great. Yeah, so I discovered strengths back in the early 2000s. 2006, I read First Break All the Rules. And I had been managing people for about 5 years at that point. Reading that book, it fundamentally changed how I managed people and managed my teams. It gave me a roadmap to success, and I loved it, right? So some of the things I was doing already, but now I had either validation that I was on the right track, or I had a nice framework that made it simple and straightforward for me to use. So wanting more, I said, what else can I read? I said, now discover your strengths. Let's read that one. And that's where I discovered StrengthsFinder. Again, when I took StrengthsFinder, I was transformed as a leader. Mm-hmm. I loved StrengthsFinder. I love CliftonStrengths because it gave me language to describe something that I could only previously feel. And, I've taken other assessments and it sort of engages me here, right? Oh yeah, that makes sense. I get that. Right. I took Clifton and the hair stood up on the back of my neck. You get that feeling in the pit of your stomach. You're like, oh my gosh, this is me. Right. It kind of cuts to the core and really, tugs at the heartstrings in a way that other assessments didn't do. And what I loved was, I had some feedback from a couple years prior. And I said, I just happened to stumble upon it and I read through it. And now that I had this lens of strengths that I could look through this feedback, it was so interesting to see how consistent it was. Some of the feedback I had in my old assessment or my old feedback was, I can see around corners. I have a laser focus on results. I spur people to action and my presence is unmistakable. Right? I'm like, oh my gosh, activator, command, strategic, all coming through.
Right on.
I was also told I'm too intense, maybe a little bit rough around the edges at times. I can come across as arrogant. I need to let people catch up. I said, all right, well, yeah, I can overuse these strengths too, right? They're there. But after taking CliftonStrengths, right, I could see this more clearly. But not only that, I had actions to take to help calibrate, refine, dial it up, dial it down, and really take some actions to develop it. So it was awesome.
Yeah.
So naturally, what did I do? I was leading a team of 5 at the time. I said, all of you, you're taking strengths. Let's go do it. Right. Here's the book. I bought it for you. Go take it, do the code, understand what your strengths are. We had a couple team meetings. We applied those strengths to work. We redefined some roles and responsibilities. The team learned and grew, and our performance shifted into high gear. It was incredible. They were outperforming other teams. My manager came to me about 6 months in and said, "Jim, what are you doing with the team?" I said, "We're focusing on strengths. We're driving engagement." The whole team, all 5 of them, earned a promotion within 18 months. It was awesome. So my manager says, "Hey, can I do this? Can you do this for my team as well?" So my first strengths workshop was in 2008. Very ill-equipped, but we made it through. And I guess with that, I became a strengths evangelist at that point.
Yeah.
Jim,
I was going to say that's an amazing that story. So everybody got a promotion. I think we have to manage expectations around that, but that sure says something about performance. What do you think in terms of their reaction? Where did you connect strengths to their performance as their team leader in a way that moved it so rapidly and so tangibly? Was there a flashpoint in your own coaching? You're a strengths coach, but this was before you were certified as a strengths coach. But what happened at Exchange that you think really moved performance for your team?
Yeah, I think we started to understand our lens and each other's lenses a lot better. Okay. I had assignments where one of my team members, I said, "Hey, I hate to do this to you, but we've got these metrics we need to run, and we really got to do some serious data crunching on it, and we need someone to put this together and organize it in a way." Well, he has analytical in his top 5, and he had responsibility. And when I gave him this assignment, I'm saying, "This sounds terrible," and he lit up. Not only did he light up, he did it faster. He did a much better job than I ever would have, and he enjoyed it, and he got recognized for it. So we did a lot of that type of work, saying the stuff that drains one person really energizes another, and we can leverage that to really maximize team performance.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's always our conversion, right? Is we want to always it's about performance, then strengths, right? And so how are we using strengths to really lever that up? So I'm curious about that. And I'd love to have you speak to that as we go through our conversation, because I think that orientation and focus on performance is one that we just can't take our eyes off of. So, and you've done it at world-class levels. So feel free to tug on that thread as you continue on through your conversation. So your team has exploded, right? They are thriving personally, professionally in ways that the organization is noticing. So that gives you credibility, right? So you now have physical, experiential evidence that this really works. What then created the awakening to really start to think about the systemic or holistic application of this on and within Lonza to move performance at the organizational level?
Sure. Yeah. So, I think, here at Lonza, just a quick background, we're delivering medicines of tomorrow, today,
Yeah.
right? We're looking at what's the future of biotechnology and pharmaceuticals. We focus on making life-saving products for our customers, and improve, patients' lives. I'll tell you, as you can imagine, we do quite well on question 8. Mission and purpose of my company makes my job feel important. Everyone comes to work every day and understands just how important the work they do really impacts people's lives. It's wonderful. In 2016, we benchmarked our performance across the industry as our site. We're a manufacturing site, 24/7 operations. We looked at 6 key areas of performance and said, how are we doing across the industry? And then we set this really audacious goal of saying, we want to be top tier performance, in all 6 of these categories by 2020. How are we going to do that? How are we going to raise our performance to that world-class level? And that's where strengths and engagement came in, right? Because engagement drives performance, strengths drives engagement. That's that's where we wanted to change the conversations and change the way of thinking to really help us achieve these goals. Yeah. So the first thing we had to do, right? I'll just jump right in. Do you want me to know?
No, dude, I was just going to say, I'm really curious. So bring that. I love that. I love the finally you're creating there. So take us in. What was your first step entry point? Where did you see the initial opening where this is where we need to step through? This is the right ignition to set off the chain reaction our organization needs. What did you sense and identify?
Yeah, I mean, I needed to buy that. I had to get that buy-in and that sponsorship, from as high up as our executive level.
Yeah.
And you and I know strengths and engagement drives performance and changes cultures and brings companies to a better place, right? Not everyone's been exposed to that yet, right? The right answer isn't enough. I had to engage the decision makers, intellectually and emotionally to say, yeah, we can do this, or we should try this approach, right? There was no question on what, but how was very much in limbo for a long time. So that decision making is emotional. That change management's emotional. I had to appeal to each of my stakeholders and answer what's in it for me, what's important to me, and why do we need to take this approach. So my executives, we used facts and data. We pulled in some case studies, but really what turned it was some key relationships with my immediate sponsor, and being able to engage and leverage those relationships to say, I truly believe in this, and I know we work together, and you trust me. Let's move forward with it, and that really turned the tide in many cases. Our managers, our middle managers, how are we going to get that buy-in, from our site leadership through our managers? And we said, they say, I never have enough time. Don't pile something else onto my plate and make me do more work, right? And I started almost every conversation with, well, think about what is your best day at work? What does that look like to you? And I get the chuckles. Who has a good day at work, right? And I say, okay, let's think about it, right? And pretty quickly they say, well, it would be, less time spent firefighting and answering emails, and more time engaged with my people. And they have this great story behind what a great day looks like for them. We get a lot of stuff done. We get a lot of achievers. And imagine having those same conversations, having more of them, having them be 10 times more effective than they are today. And let me give you some tools and some framework to help you have more of those best days. And what would the team be like if everybody was having more best days? And so again, engages them a little bit emotionally, gets them thinking about it, and says, I would love to have something like that. Here's how we can do it.
Yeah.
And last, everybody else on the site, all of our frontline workers, everybody here. Oh, engagement. Oh, here's another corporate buzzword coming through, right? Well, what does engagement mean to me? I said, well, what about safety, right?
Mhm.
Engaged workers are more safety conscious. Well, yeah, that's important to me, right? I want to make sure I go home every day safe, right? We have fewer defects, less rework, fewer problems on the floor. Well, that sounds great to me too, right? I want to do more work and be more productive and spend less time fixing problems. What if you could understand your colleagues better? What if you had shorthand to talk about how to build stronger relationships with those people you spend 12 plus hours a day on the shop floor with?
Yeah.
And they say, yeah, that's great. I would love that. All right. Well, let's talk about our strengths, right? So we kind of built it in half engagement, half emotional and half intellectual to really bring it together.
Yeah, no, that's great. You know, you, I'm not going to forget this quote that you just shared with us, but it probably deserves to be underscored. Being right wasn't going to be enough.
Yeah.
Being right was not going to be enough. And I thought that was terrific because we can operate out of that well-intended, rational, intellectual, logical approach all day long. And are we continually disappointed in how it never, ever, it doesn't deliver, right? And speaking to the power of strengths, the power of engagement, that emotional core that each of us has that really governs and dictates our behavior just will not be ignored. And so I think I love the way you laid out the story in the combination of both the emotional, but also the empirical, right? We talk about that a lot. Jim and I do in our podcast around engagement. We're always wanting to work through that framework of the empirical, the emotional, and the experiential. Tell us about the experiential, because as a strengths coach, you were involved then with actively coaching people on through this process. How did that, where did that move decisive victories and gains and advances in the organization's adoption of strengths and engagement? And then were there any particular stories or turnarounds where there was some real resistance to this, where your individual one-on-one personal coaching really shifted the direction of how that person felt, and as a result, the organization?
Yeah. Great question. Thank you. One of the big, I guess, guiding principles that we started with was this has to become part of Lonza Portsmouth's culture. This can't just be, a flash in the pan. How do we make sure this sticks and this becomes part of who we are and how we do things around here? So my initial approach, my initial proposal was, we're gonna call in an army of Gallup consultants and swoop in, and in 12 weeks, everyone's gonna understand their strengths, and they're gonna go through these workshops, and it's gonna be amazing, and everyone's gonna walk out, and we're gonna be engaged and know our strengths and do wonderful things. And as we discussed it, we said, is that really gonna drive ownership at our level, at all levels? And we said, well, maybe there's a different approach, and we went ahead and said, okay, what if we bring in our Gallup experts? We lead a 2-day strengths discovery course with our site leadership team. Start at the top. We're gonna start this, effective sponsorship and buy-in from all of our site leaders. Get them to feel it, get them to understand it, and get that team becoming, an even more high-performing team. So we did 2-day strengths discovery, some one-on-one coaching with each of, our Gallup consultants provided one-on-one coaching with each of our site leaders. We certified 3 strengths coaches and 10 engagement champions. So we took them through the 2-day engagement champions training, and equipped them with the tools and the resources to support the Q12 elements and the principles at the site, as well as help our leaders interpret the results and build action plans to drive those engagement scores up. So we created this, this core team of change agents that were really focused on shifting the culture, with the goal of creating, a whole army of engagement advocates. Who are those early adopters that we can really lean on, so it's not Jim and a handful of people saying strengths is great and engagement's what we need, to, hey, the manager that I work for says this is important to me and it's going to change how we run the business. That's the power. That's where we really started to see a shift.
Yeah. So you got this, you call it an army of champions, but really these are coaches of engagement, right? Working through this program that you're releasing. So you've got this convergence of strengths coaching and engagement coaching coming together. How much of that was intentional in its fit? How much of that in its contribution to moving the organization forward were you a little bit pleasantly surprised by? If you think about different combinations of ingredients, et cetera, you had a plan and a structure for coaching, right, around strengths that you start off with. You bring in engagement champions. They coach through engagement. Where was there nice combinations and complementary pieces that helped move your efforts forward? Some of it, again, you saw in your vision and your architecture in advance, but what did you see happen in the connections anecdotally or organically in your delivery?
Yeah, I think one big area of focus for the site has been, we need to create a culture where feedback is encouraged and appreciated, and we want to hear the feedback. And people say, I want to hear the feedback, and then sometimes I say, I want feedback, and then when I get the feedback, if I don't like it, I say, well, I'm going to consider the source, or I don't really buy that. I'm not going to make any change. And other people, of course, take it to heart. What I found was, when we took those initial Q12 baseline questions and had the team respond, I love, Q12 is about my experience as somebody who works here and what I'm seeing day to day. But as a manager, when I receive those scores and I see, what my scores are in each of the elements, I take it as feedback on me and my performance. I was coaching one manager. She got her Q12 survey results for the first time, and it was sobering. She had an emotional response. At first, it was, "Oh, this is wrong. There's no way that my team feels this way about me." Yeah. And we had to shift the conversation a little bit and say, this isn't just you. This is their experience, of which you have 70% of the influence to drive and change, right? So let's not take it personally, but let's think about forward-looking, how we can shift that performance moving forward. But she had to change her management style, or she felt like she had to make some changes to what she did day to day. And of course, it started with resistance, and then understanding, and then practice, building some new habits, and being upfront and forward and saying, hey, I got these results. Let's share them with the team. And how can we collectively raise the engagement of this team? And her scores weren't bad. They weren't. Yeah. They were pretty solid, especially for a baseline. They were pretty solid, but it definitely was not in line with her vision as she saw herself as a manager. Happy to say, after putting these elements into practice and putting them, changing her management style, not changing who she is, but changing how she went about some of these conversations and really keeping a focus on engagement, her scores went up, or the team scores went up, 6 months later. And we said, all right, hey, we're driving true engagement and true performance in a way that we didn't have a framework before. So it was great. It was great from that, where, she was getting the feedback and now doing something with it. And it was taken, with a way that really drove performance.
Yeah, Jim, I love that answer. And you answered it beautifully, because you're really creating a culture of coaching, right? And it changes conversations, it changes interactions. And that was such an excellent example of putting well-intended managers in positions of strength to lead their teams in the ways that they wanted to, but just didn't have that coaching acumen or that coaching mentality to actually create those conversations and draw performance out of them. And so when I think about that, could have been a really frightening and really horrifying situation for that manager to say, wow, my team, at least on the metrics of engagement, is not showing up well. And then to be left empty-handed, not knowing what are my strengths, how am I equipped to have the right conversations to connect the dots in the way it's right for my team, to use my strengths and my self-awareness as a leader to activate the strengths of my team, to accumulate up and promote engagement as we're experiencing at the team level, and therein performance on the other side. So I always say is we can, without the coaching and without strengths or engagement involved in that, we can have a complete assembly line of victims, right? That we just mass produce. because we don't know what we're supposed to do. We don't know if we're good at what we're supposed to do, if we knew what it was, and we're certainly not provided a space of understanding and support to be able to do those things that we think our organization wants us to do. And so we can just let ourselves off the hook, and we've got an endless list of excuses why we can't do those things. You just put that leader back squarely at the helm. They've got a great dashboard that they can operate and understand from, and really hit all the right buttons, all the right levers at the right times for their team, and do everything so well. But it's that positioning of coaching, not only through strengths, but also through engagement in the same combination. That was a great case study to learn from in that example. So Jim is a world leader in change management. Let's take us on into the story. You've taken the site past that initial introduction to strengths and engagement. Tell us about what adoption looked like in its initial stages at Lonza. Where did you start to see there being a legitimate foundation being built in strengths and engagement at Lonza?
Yeah, sure. So, I think, we did encounter some resistance initially. And I think I got quite a bit of feedback early on that talked about, Jim, we don't have time for a full day workshop or a half day, strengths training on top of everything we're doing, right? So we took a lot of that feedback and said, okay, how do we adjust course, right? Well, what can you do? If you can't do a full day, can you do a half day? Can you do a 2-hour session? And, I even had some managers saying, I don't know if I can give up that time. I said, well, what do you have available? I said, well, we do a staff meeting once a week. Maybe you could come, and you could take one of our staff meetings once a month and talk through strengths. I said, awesome. I'll take what I get. We actually created a 5-part program, a modular program, to introduce strengths to all of our leaders and equip them with the understanding around strengths-based principles and how to have effective conversations to bring out the best, not just in themselves, but in their teams as well. And depending on the team, we would do an hour session, give them a little homework to reinforce, come back 2 weeks later, do it again and again and again. So, and some teams went through a 12-week program where they really got to emphasize and repeat, hear the message multiple times. And it started to shift the conversations, and it became sticky for a lot of people, more so than maybe they would have gotten if we gave it, if I gave it all to them in one fell swoop in a full day.
Yeah.
So so we adjusted course based on the feedback that we received. So I'll share a story because the conversations are shifting around here. Managers are starting to assign work differently. I had an engineering manager after he went through a couple of our strengths workshops. He looked at the collective strengths of his team and he said, hey, I've got one engineer who's really great at coming up with ideas and building the project plan and getting it all sorted out, thinking strategically and putting the plan together. But man, I have to stay on top of him to get the work done. And, it's the feedback that he's been getting, for the last 2 years is you got to finish your projects. You got to move them forward. You got to hold people accountable. And he said, I've got another engineer who does that exceptionally well. He said, I'm going to start reassigning the work where this one engineer who does a great job at planning and putting them together and coming up with these great ideas, we're going to partner up with somebody who really drives the actions and can really execute. And, they're going to hand off the project. I never thought I could hand off a project from one engineer to another. And now they're both performing, 10 times better. It was just, to see that aha moment happen and have him shift in how he assigns work and, plays to the strengths of his people was really powerful.
Yeah. Isn't it awesome when you and I think that's something that happens when you put performance at the center. Again, I'm going to be a broken record on just putting performance out there first. But if you think about it, it really helps us take our eye off of our own self-preferential style of how things get done. And when we put our focus on what needs to get done rather than our own, again, preferential style, then we just naturally are more collaborative. We're naturally more creative, and we start to think and act differently around those solutions. And our efforts towards a better performance, right? If I only care about how it gets done, and Jim, if you only care about how it gets done, we can battle and resist each other all day long. Or we could pay attention to the performance rather than the preference. And then again, our instincts take over, and we just naturally collaborate and create that great partnership. So I really like putting that, again, it's a necessary reason why performance needs to be out there, because people forget about themselves and they start to align so much more effectively and efficiently, and relationally too, right? It starts to matter personally now. We kind of get that all aligned. So I love that story. One thing that I think is important that, and we should address this, has come up from the chat, is tell us about how is this communicated when you're taking a culture forward, and you've got different groups that need to represent different roles in their support of what this all looks like through strengths and engagement. How did you message this out formally and as a campaign, but even relationally and as at the grassroots level? What was the communication story behind Lonza's success?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you change a culture, right?
Yeah. Write that book.
I think when we started to talk about, what does that culture, what do we want that culture to look like, right? We started with, communicate broad and wide, right? We used all kinds of vehicles from, emails, communication cascades through our leaders, right? So we started with having our site leaders understand, and get that buy-in, engage them emotionally to say, yes, this has made me better, it's made the team better, and it's going to make all of you better. So then our managers, we went through that deep dive on the training and the strengths, introduction to strengths, and it created this hunger where managers were talking about their strengths, asking their people about their strengths, and said, I want to bring this to the rest of my team. So we intentionally held back a little bit, created some buzz, and created some interest into, hey, why does everybody have what are those 5 words underneath their name outside their door, right? So we did, top 5 plaques, putting their top 5 on their door, adding it to email signatures. So, we were open and forward with the communication. Hey, CliftonStrengths is coming. Hey, discover what you do best. We talked about it at town halls, but we almost created this little bit of mystique around, hey, why does my manager all of a sudden, why is he pulling out these strengths discovery? What are these strengths discovery cards, and why is he looking through them when he talks to his supervisors? What's that all about? So we created some interest, and I'm happy to say the day that we rolled out, we made the site-wide announcements. Hey, CliftonStrengths is here. Everybody is going to get a link to the assessment. Go ahead and understand what you do best. Within that first day, we had over 100 people go in and complete the assessment within the first 24 hours. So we created this hunger right away, right? And that really, once you have that tipping point, it gets a whole lot easier. So the vehicles we used, town hall meetings, leader cascade. We have digital boards around the plant. So we have I partner pretty closely with my site communications leader, and we've created some slides that we put up, and it's 7 seconds, right? Do you know what your top 5 are? I don't even know what you're talking about. Hey, ask my supervisor, what are they talking about top 5? Oh, hey, let me tell you about it, right? Hey, you get, here's where you go. Oh, there's an app for that, right? So, we kind of built some buzz around, there's some different ways to do it. Table tents in the cafeteria. We built an intranet page. So every time I led a workshop, I said, you've got a wealth of resources around Q12, engagement, strengths, on our intranet page. Here's a copy of the slides that we put together for this workshop. You can go here. This activity that you did today that you really like and you want to bring to your teams, don't wait for me. Go ahead and log in, print off the sheet, and go run it with your people. I did some road shows. I would go to staff meetings, department meetings, answer questions, did some one-on-one, some group coaching. Any way I could get the message out, I would do it. And of course, we have those physical reminders, right? People putting their top 5 at their desks, posting it in their, top 5. We have daily huddles, and everyone's top 5. The leaders would put the top 5 up there on the board, so people would walk by and see it there. Engagement action plans would go up on those boards, so it was very public, saying this is what we're working on to drive engagement within our team. And people started sharing ideas. It was great. Yeah. And then we had this Faces of Engagement communication campaign. where, again, it wasn't me and one or two of my engagement champions saying, oh, this is awesome, this is how we do it, but from line managers. We took manufacturing and quality managers and said, what does engagement mean to you? Which of the factors are you focusing on and why? And how are you using engagement to drive strengths? And we would take those quotes, put their picture up on the board, put their quote next to it. So if they said, hey, I don't really know who Mike is, and I don't really, care for that, but I know who Jim is, and I really want to learn more about what Jim thinks about this. All of a sudden, different people were bringing the message in a slightly different way, but it was starting to resonate with more and more people.
Mm-hmm. Jim, that last part gets me so excited, and I'm you've heard me say so many times, right, about the stories propagating our culture, and I love those the faces of engagement and the way those become living, breathing examples of engagement. Right, engagement isn't items, it's not numbers, it's actually people who are representing what those experiences look like, what those emotional and motivational needs of engagement actually look like. And they're heroes in that space, right? They're our best practice representatives. And so they just transmit that culturally. And so now it's an emotional relational experience that we get to have on a daily basis. And I love the way you, as a strategy, position that out as a communication piece. Do you have, if you were just to anecdotally audit your efforts, were there some that were kind of your favorite for the effect that they had, that either they were powerful in expected ways or maybe powerful in unexpected ways?
Yeah, as far as like activities that I was,
just things that you really thought that people really got wound up over and had a sustainability to it, that where you could tell it generated conversations and experiences that spilled out of and over from that point in time.
Yeah. Where do I start? One of my favorite activities right now that we've been doing in some of our team workshops, I've coined it, what is your superpower and who is your sidekick?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Or who's, which of your top 5 themes do you use exceptionally well? We discussed that concept of how do you turn a talent into a strength, but really, odds are you have one that, one or two, or maybe all 5 that you're using really well and driving your performance and your team's performance, and you lean on that strength. So I get people to start talking about, what do I do well, and get used to, leaning into, this is what I do well, and I can let go of those things that maybe I'm not as good at. But the second half, who's your sidekick, or who are those powerful partners that you like to lean on, and why? And I challenge them. I say, pick somebody by name. Don't give me a theme. Give me a name. Give me somebody that you like to partner with. Oh, I like to partner with so-and-so because they bring out great ideas, or I can share ideas and I can go back and forth. And I do, so we go around the room. Everybody will say, here's my superpower and why. And then here's my sidekick, or here's my powerful partner. I lean on this person because. And we get some really awesome feedback around the room. Everybody shares some really amazing stories. Sometimes there are people in the room, sometimes they're not. And I challenge every person in that room. I say, you just shared some really awesome feedback. I've got homework for you. I want you to go back and tell that person just what you told the team here. Yeah. Right? Even if it feels a little awkward or it feels a little silly, it's important that they know that they have this positive effect on you, and it's going to feel good. A drop in their bucket.
Yeah.
And of course, that ties to question 3. Do I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day? Does somebody at work seem to care about me as a person? And, the ambiguous, do I have a best friend at work question, right?
Everybody's favorite.
What does that mean? Well, here's what it means. You've got somebody that you lean into, somebody that you talk to, someone that you value as a powerful partner to help you be at your best. Yeah. So, we tie the strengths to engagement really beautifully in that activity.
That's awesome. Hey, so Jim, we got a couple questions coming from the chat. One, I think, will take us back to some areas that you started to expand on, and I was kind of curious about this as well. And then we'll have another that'll take us forward on into what sustainability looks like for Lonza as you continue to grow your culture on through your efforts. But if we go back a couple steps, thinking specifically about managers, can you expand a little bit more about how managers were given how they were empowered to maybe have a little bit more agility or space to shift job assignments or responsibilities to be able to improve performance? What would be your reaction to how you did that?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? we talked about and we worked through the keys to talent,
Okay.
right? And, I mean, there are some parts of our business, right? We're a GMP manufacturing facility. We are governed by FDA regulations, and we have policies and procedures that we follow. So when it comes to safety procedures or our quality procedures, there's no room to wiggle. There's no negotiation. You follow your procedures. You follow the process exactly as it's written, right? We're putting, life-saving medicines into critically ill people. We can't afford to have a mistake there, or we can't afford to deviate from what's expected of us there. So we really have to drive really precise performance there. Outside of those regulatory and those safety requirements, we start thinking about, how do you define the right outcomes? How do you see continuous improvement? How do you assign the work so that you bring out the very best in your people? We're not changing job descriptions. We're not changing job roles, right? We have 2 associates in the QC lab who both have the same skills around, I can run this assay, or I can run this test, or I can do this same work. But maybe there's parts of it that I do really well, that if I did more of this, we would have fewer errors and fewer mistakes. And I would be more excited about I'd be more excited about doing that work and finding ways to continuously improve so that we can do it faster, better, cheaper, higher quality. And somebody else can help me with the parts that I sort of struggle with. Or we can put that framework into place to say, here's the spot where I always get sort of stuck. What other support systems can I have in place to help me there?
Yeah.
So it's not about redefining job roles in that you're not changing job descriptions, but you're highlighting those things that people already naturally do and bringing that out in them.
Yeah. Jim, one of the things that really strikes me in my time that I've spent with you and working with Lonza, and confirm for the rest of the group, and maybe expand on a little bit, but part of the benefit that you all had in that structure, while on the surface it may seem rigid and really hardwired, is necessary, right, for quality control, for safety, et cetera. But there is a frequency of communication and contact within the support of quality and safety that I think maybe you were able to leverage to your advantage, right? In the frequency of those touch points. It is I guess, is that true, what I'm saying? And B, if you look back, was that, were you then able carrying messages of engagement through that infrastructure of communication and those frequency of touch points? What I think back to is our reimagining or re-engineering performance development paper. And I always talk about my favorite coaching conversation out of the 5, which is the quick connect, right? And you all have layers of touch points and check-ins, et cetera. At least it seemed to me in my site tours, et cetera. Can you speak to those layers of communication and how those are structured, and maybe how you were able to leverage those, not just to ensure safety and quality, but maybe to drive engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a daily management system. Every morning, our production teams get together and talk about, some of it's strict business. What happened on the previous shift? What's coming up this shift? Who's getting assigned which work? All of that. But every day there's this initial huddle where we have a great touch point and a great opportunity to do a 10-minute strengths activity.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then we have our morning meetings, our cross-functional morning meetings, a 15-minute huddle, another place where you can not just talking with your team now, but now we're bringing strengths and talking about it across that group. So I'll share with you, we've created this manager's guide where, we've taken several activities and sort of built a 12-week strengths program, complete with before and after pictures, right? And tying it in with our state of the team, our engagement action plans. So we think about, well, what do we want to accomplish over the next 12 weeks? Let's think of our performance goal. Which Q12 element are we tying this to? And how are we going to measure success? And then it's a little prescriptive. I feel like it's sort of like training wheels, right? Okay, hey, the first week, I want you to have this conversation. The second week, I want you to have this activity. When you get to the 4th week, we review and recalibrate our action plans, and we continue to move forward. And at the end of 12 weeks, after we've gone through 12 different strengths-related activities, some of them are simple. Some of them are 10-minute team huddle. How did you use your strengths this week? Tell me about a success story. Others are more involved, where we pull together the team grid. And I ask the managers, I say, of all your touch points, one-on-ones monthly, daily team huddles, cross-functional meetings, staff meetings, where can you use this? So again, I'm defining the outcomes. This is what we want to do, and this is what we want to see. Where in your management style is this going to be most effective?
Mm-hmm. No,
and then at the end of 12 weeks, we come back, we measure that progress. Did we achieve those goals? Did we not? We'll check adjust, maybe put another Q12 set of questions out there and ask them again, how are we moving the needle? Are we not? And what do we need to adjust? And then you can start all back over.
Yeah, I love it. And Jim, the thing that you have done so well, and I think our most successful have done so well, is even when you talk about the creation of a manual, and you talk about how you're using and incorporating Gallup as a resource that you then amend and edit and modify to make it's Lonza. It's not Gallup. It's a Lonza thing, not a Gallup thing. And I think that's the highest order of delivery in a culture when you're integrating different features and pieces from lots of different sources. We like to think that we're a main contributor, but you're still using it in a way that makes sense and is relevant to you and to Lonza. And I think that's, again, an art form of delivery in terms of what you've done through strengths and engagement. Now let's take us forward into because that making it your own is a necessary conversion to really move the organization decisively forward. We got to move out of the program and training stages and phases. And how do we actually, knowing now that it's a Lonza thing, go on into a future that we're creating on purpose? Sasha has a great question, I think, that helps us in that transition. She asks, as an organization, much like most organizations, Lonza's probably been through many different culture changes. Lots of times culture changes have a half-life of even less than a year, right? If we're to be generous. As a change expert, you know all of this. So for you, Jim Ball, what's different about this particular campaign that's going to have that stickiness to it, that you have a confidence level, that your leadership and Lonza has a confidence level that this will be a decades-long life cycle on into the future that has an onward and upward trajectory?
Yeah, that's isn't that the challenge of every change agent, right?
Yeah.
I will say, of the tools that we're creating and of the activities that we're doing, right? Really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to manage through that dip in performance that comes with, I don't really know what to do. I've been given these tools. I've been given this information. Well, what do I do with it? Right. That's why we need change agents. That's why we need coaches and engagement champions. I mean, you guys know, right? Gallup data shows 1 in 10 people have that natural talent to be world-class managers, right? So the tools that we're creating and what we're giving out, it's probably not adding much for that 10%. They already do this. They already know it. If anything, strengths becomes an accelerator, or it validates what they've already know or do. For the other 90% of us, this is so powerful, right? This is training wheels for us, right? It's a roadmap. It's a guide that can help us go from where we are today, whether that's good, bad, really good, not so good, and bring us to that level where we're all equipped with the right tools and we've got the right support, right? So we've got the training wheels, we got someone kind of giving us a push on the back until we get stable. And then eventually, we want to get to that point where, hey, Jim, this is great that you put together this 12-week strengths guide. That's cool and all, but I don't need it because I talk strengths in my one-on-one. We cover engagement questions in our one-on-ones. I know the strengths of my team and I continue to build that. So we want to shift the conversation from this is something that is done to us, or this is something that we're trying or piloting, to this is how we do things here. When people start saying this is a strengths-based organization, when people kick off meetings consistently and say, hey, what are your top 5? Hey, I'm Jim. Here's my top 5. This is what you need to know, right? We're doing that now, and sometimes it feels awkward and clumsy. Until it becomes normal and natural, we're going to continue to reinforce and provide those supports.
Yeah.
Eventually, at some point, this is when it becomes sticky, right? When we reach that tipping point, when it's no longer, I've got to work through the motions, but not just understand, but feel that intrinsic value of when I focus on my people's strengths, they perform better, they're more engaged, and we get a better result, right? And once I start getting that, once I start getting that dopamine hit, right, and it says, all right, that's awesome. This feels good. My job is easier. I love coming to work because I know that my coworkers are committed to work. I know that we're driving performance, and I'm having a lot more fun. Then you don't need the support, and you don't need the framework as much, because people are doing it, feeling that intrinsic value, and want to do more because it's getting it's rewarding for them.
Yeah. Well, your futuristic strength is going to serve you well, Jim, as you literally create it on purpose, right? Bring back that future picture back to where we're at now, and put together the steps for each of us to realize and establish along the way to make it a reality. So one last question, I think we'll hit into a wrap here, but getting back to a little bit of the logistics, and I think this still does connect to the sustainability portion of our conversation. So you're measuring engagement. So how are you communicating the roll up to the measurement to that field administration, where you're actually answering questions? The organization is actually answering those questions to capture engagement. What's the roll up communication wise leading up to it? And what's the expectation on the other side of it, as you've had a little bit of a cadence around the delivery and orientation around the actual administration?
So you're talking about when we survey our teams and
Exactly.
we gather the information, how are we keeping that open and transparent?
Yeah. How do you frame the relevance and importance of their participation, and what those numbers mean going into it, and what are the cultural expectations of what's going to happen on the other side of actually measuring it?
Yeah, I think so. I'm happy to say, at our last town hall meeting, our site head stood up in front of everybody and said, here's the results from our last pulse survey, right? And we said, in not just overall grand mean type of score, but here's a breakdown of the various elements of where we're doing well, where we're still looking to improve. Okay, so this is what we've seen. Here's the actions that we're taking as a site leadership team. Here's the actions that I expect from you as part of this team and actively involved in driving that engagement. So this isn't something that's being done to the team. This is something that everybody has a part in. We've taken sorry, I'll keep going.
No, please do.
Okay. We've taken our engagement action plans and we've published them on the intranet page. People are putting them up on their boards. So sometimes people are comfortable publishing their scores. Sometimes people are not. We're definitely keeping it so that it's optional. You don't have to share your scores. Some of those competitive folks really want to see it.
Right.
But the expectation is that there's transparency at all levels, right? So when we do our state of the team meetings, the manager says, these were our scores. And right now we still have engagement champions helping to facilitate that. But the idea is that, you get into the conversation and someone goes, oh yeah, see those scores on participant number 5? See how they're all great? That's me. That's me, right? And it's like, we don't want to know break down whose individual scores are what. What we want to know is, collectively, how are we going to continue to drive either places that we're struggling and we need to boost engagement, or places that we're doing really well that we can leverage to bring this team to a better place. So it's transparency at all levels. Sometimes it's as simple as a spreadsheet that the engagement champion prepares with the scores, and we say, this is this is where we stand. Obviously, it's a little more sophisticated when you're doing a town hall presentation, but still the same principles apply, right? Here's where we stand. Here's what we're doing well. Here's what's not going well, and here's what we're doing, and here's what we expect from you. Yeah. So those are the key communication points that we keep driving.
Jim, that's amazing. When you saw me shaking my head earlier, it was in disbelief at how like best practice what you were describing was. So I wasn't saying no, but that was like literally like it was perfect. Like I was shaking my head like, this is unbelievable what you're sharing. And in our experience, where you won is your leadership winning over Lonza's site leadership, and you can just see the cascade effect. And we love what our data tells us, right? That if those leaders are categorically engaged, which they are, the managers of the teams, the managers that report up to them, who are leading teams are 39% more likely to be engaged themselves. What's really cool about that story is their teams are 59% more likely to be engaged. So for all of the architecture you put in place, you still brought it back to that primary pressure point, that if our senior exec leaders are not walking out the story of engagement and strengths with authenticity, the rest is just a program and it's an exercise, and you've done that beautifully. Jim Collison, Jim Ball, this was just spectacular. Thank you for all your insight, for all your expertise, and not just for our event today, for our conversation today, but just your activity within the coaching community and being so engaged and involved yourself. That means a lot to us at Gallup, and I'm sure to the rest of the coaches as well.
Mike, can I share one more thing?
Yes, you can.
I'll be quick. 1 minute.
He has Jim Collison. He has command and
I know. It's all good. It's all good. Let's let him roll.
I want to close it out, right? Because where are we now? Where's the so what, right? So 100% of our managers have completed their CliftonStrengths. We're well above 65% of our people, and we said it's optional. We can't force people to take their strengths, right? This is a developmental tool. People are hungry for it. Our goal is by the end of August, all 90+% of our people have taken their strengths. So we're not even full blown running with it yet. Pulse survey indicates that we are on target for a 20% uptick in our employee engagement scores at the next full blown Life at Lonza survey, and we're on track for all those 2020 targets that we set out to achieve. We're on track for all of those right now. So
that's awesome. That is to be applauded. Yeah.
Jim, it's a good way to wrap that up. It's there. This isn't just a wish, but that you guys are tracking all of these pieces and making sure that you have accountability for them, and that you're coming back around to it. I love hearing that you're not forcing everybody onto. I know this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but you're not forcing folks into the strengths movement, but you're giving an opportunity to improve when they're ready. And I think it's a super smart move. I think the tendency sometimes is to mandate, and nobody really likes being told that, right? You really want them to come to that conclusion. And I think it's the best possible scenario when a team sees another team being successful and they ask, like, hey, how are you guys doing this? Right. And the team says, well, here's what we've done. Right. And if it's around that, then boom, it's hooked. Everybody loves to jump on a team that's winning. And so it's just, it's one of those things. So Jim, thanks for taking the day, the preparation. You did a great job of putting notes together for us, but thank you for that. It was great to see you at the summit, and thanks again. Hang tight for me 1 second as I wrap this. So, and I should say, Mike McDonald, thanks for coming on and doing the interview. You were fantastic. It's like you've done this before.
Hey, look who I was talking to. I had Jim Ball on. I mean, how much easier does it get than that? Yeah.
Slam dunk. It was pretty easy. But Mike, thanks for jumping in today as well. We'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. Just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments if you got those. We like them in email form. Really easy. coaching@gallup.com. You can just send that to us. If you want to catch the recorded audio and video of this program, plus all the past ones, you can get a link to all of our social resources off our coaches blog, just coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup-Certified Strengths Coach, or you want to take some courses from us, we have plenty of them that are available for you. A complete list of all those, including the Engagement Champion course, is listed out there on our courses site. Just go to courses.gallup.com, and we have a link in our resources page as well if you can't find that. We want to actually invite you to our Facebook group if you want to continue in the conversation. We have about 11,000 people out in our Facebook group to continue on the conversation. If you're new to that, go to facebook.com/groups/called2coach, all one word, called to coach. And just ask to be invited in, and I will approve it. And we'd love to have you join us there. I want to thank both of you guys for coming out. I want to thank those who came out to join us live. We'll be back with another Called to Coach just next week. And appreciate it for coming out. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.